Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. I have a confession to make and that is when I read the title of this article I had to go quickly to my safe space. Okay, so that's how I felt. I was horrified and I couldn't believe it. But hey, what do you want? These things could be interpreted this way, I guess. I've seen worse. This comes from Al Mayadeen. This is an Arab news outlet. This is the title. It's from today, the 29th of November 2022. Russian envoy slams the Pope over racist remarks on Russian soldiers. Do you believe that? The Pope cannot make such a statement. You know why? Because he's infallible. That means he can't make a mistake. Well, that's what the Catholic Church tells us anyway. And I am a believer. So let's see. The chairman of the regional parliament of the Chechen Republic has said the Pope's statements were exemplary of primitive reasoning. Oh my, primitive? Well, what do you want? When was that put in writing, put together? 330 something in the synod from Nietzsche, whatever Nietzsche. That's when it was in 332. Is that what the meeting when the Bible was? All right, let's see, guys. What do? We take this writing, we take this one. Oh, we don't take this one. We don't take this one. We take this one. All right, and now what do? How do we explain all this thing here? Well, you gonna explain it. You gonna explain it, and then we're gonna figure it out. Okay. Basically, that's how it was put together. Don't believe me? Just 2 clicks away. If you don't read books, you can read the internet, and that's gonna tell you. All right, so let's see what's going on here. What did the Pope say? I mean, I'm pretty sure the Russians are, because they're evil, or in this case even worse, Chechens. That would make me a racist as well, right? I'm pretty sure they did it. Russia's ambassador to the Vatican, Alexander Andeev, told reporters on Tuesday that he had protested to the Holy See diplomatic corps against Pope Francis's Russophobic remark that Russia's ethnic minority soldiers were the, and I'm quoting, this is the Pope, cruelest in the military conflict in Ukraine. Oh my God. And I'm quoting, I have expressed outrage at such institutions and noted insinuations and noted that nothing can shake the cohesion and unity of the multinational Russian people, Andeev said. In similar comments, Magomed Daudov, the chairman of the regional parliament of the Chechen Republic, Russia's federal subject, said the Pope's statements were exemplary of primitive reasoning. What do you expect? I mean, however you want to take it, man. However you want to take it. It's unbelievable that, anyway, I'm not going to go into that today. Primitive reasoning, and that not a single case of a war crime had been committed by Chechens and Buryats in Ukraine. Well, I don't know. They probably say you guys did a lot of them. Well, the article continues, and I'm quoting, if we had bothered to listen to inhabitants of the liberated territories, if he would have learned that the Chechen fighters, just like the Buryats and representatives of hundreds of other peoples of Russia, have become saviors of these people. But no, it's easier to speak out in line with the US agenda. How can a spiritual leader whose diocese includes representatives of most people of the world allow himself to reason on the national issue in such a primitive way? End quote. Daudov said on Telegram. Yesterday, Pope Francis, let's see what he said in an interview with America magazine that soldiers, and I'm quoting right now, who are of Russia but are not of the Russian tradition, such as the Chechens and Buryats, or Buryati, have so far been the cruelest since Moscow's military operation began in Ukraine earlier this year. Well, he must know, because he's, Pope, and the Pope knows shit, okay? And he can't say shit because he's Pope. I mean, you gotta believe that, okay? You can throw everything out, just... Anyway, I'm pretty sure that he's, poor Pope, he's like, what, 1,000 years old already? 80 some, isn't he? Well, if you look back in time, there were some stories, I learned them as well in school, and I'm not 3,000 years old, or 1,000, or whatever, where there were things like this. Oh my God, when the Germans invaded Soviet Union, they were terrified of the Kazakhs for the same reason. And these were, again, stories then, and again, I learned that in Romania as a Romanian, all right? So, and there were a lot of Germans saying that they were afraid to be captured by the Kazakhs because they would use the sword and just kill you. Remember, we got examples with Japan. Japan were Japanese officers that had katanas, swords, samurai swords. There were many, many incidents where they were testing the quality of the blade by cutting the prisoners' heads. Now, you can even now see that on internet. You can find that, and it's an example where you have an Australian pilot. He's kneeled down with his eyes covered and headband, and behind him a Japanese officer with a katana up ready. And the photograph is taken by Japanese, not by the Americans or Australians. So yes, and there's a lot of eyewitnesses who said that, but the Japanese did not hide that at all. And now from personal knowledge, not that I cut anybody's head off, but from my readings and my passions, the samurai in the medieval times, they were testing their blades on the criminals. So they would get criminals that were convicted to death, and they would try to see if they can cut the head with one blow, and that would be considered a masterful blow, and the quality of the blade. As well, they would do it with people that were with the cadavers. They were already killed, and they were exposed to the public, and again, the samurais were practicing cutting limbs and all that to test their skills. That was not oh my God, normal, I would say, for that behavior. You just practice with a real corpse or human being that would be disposed at that time. I know that, I can't remember, it was I think it was the swords, the steel of Toledo, the most famous sword steel that was used for swords. That's the Japanese and the Toledo, and supposedly the Toledo is better than the samurais. Now, I'm sorry for Masamune, which is the greatest master in Japan's history in swords, making swords. Remember Masamune? And the other one in Toledo, supposedly they will, one of the secrets in creating the steel is how you temper it, I think you call it. That is, when it's hot, you have to put in a certain kind of liquid to change the temperature. By changing with the right temperature, you give the steel a certain kind of durability and all that. So you have to do this process. And from what I read, I don't know if it's just a story or not, the guys in Toledo, they would use slaves. And they would use the blade, hitting the slave here and going the blade in there, and let the blade cool down with the body. As the body was cooling down by, obviously the slave died. By the way, it was not necessarily a black slave, so we cut that, all right? So we don't have here anything, all right? Slave. There were white slaves, there were Asian slaves, there were black slaves, there were, okay? So you don't catch me with that one. So anyway, this is what they were doing. Putting the sword in here while the slave was alive, obviously, and then while the body was cooling down, the steel was getting the right proper temperature of the body. Now another story, I'm going to go now with this steel, but anyway, you can turn it off if you want. Obviously, you're a free human being, but you have to pay taxes, so you're not that free. So otherwise, they will get you in jail. Another story is with Masamune. He had Masamune was with one of his students, and as I said, one of the most important things is the temperature of the water you put the steel in. When it's hot, you cool the blade. And this student, he knew everything, the whole process of making the blade, but the temperature. The master would always push them out when it was about the water's temperature. And they didn't know. I mean, they knew everything, but that's one of the most important things, the temperature. So this little guy, that he was working with Masamune, and here was the water, that the temperature set by Masamune, and this guy would put the chip, and he wanted to figure out. And then how do you figure out? Put your hand in it, and you know it's hot, it's warm, what the fuck temperature it is. And when he said that, Masamune was working on the sword or whatever he was doing, and with his back turned towards the weasel, and the weasel was like, he's not looking, the old man. And he clip, and the guy, whoosh, he just like, cut his hand off. Too late, the guy already knew the temperature. Let's say a story, but anyway, it's a lot of stories with this, how you put spirit into the blade. It depends what kind of songs you sing, what kind of religious incantation you give. You can have a sword that's going to be very easy to draw out and cut, or one that would stay in the sheet over there, you're not going to get out. It's a lot of a very interesting part. Anyway, so in this case we have the Pope. He might have said bullshit, who doesn't, right? But intentional. We were taught that, as I said, that's why I think why I left. They were taught that when the Germans were caught by these guys were really bad by the Cossacks. Now that would make everybody, xenophobic or racist or whatever you want to call it. But that's the way it was. It was a different culture, different methods. If you remember, it was a British pilot that he, in the Second World War, he was shot down over Yugoslavia. So he was parachuted, and then the partisans got him and saved him from the Germans. And then he stayed with the partisans for some time, months or something, and he was like horrified what the partisans, the Serbs, Croats, whatever they were, under Tito's leadership, they were doing with the German prisoners. He said, I read about these things in the medieval stories that I used in England, in Great Britain. They were cutting noses, ears, genitalia and all that. He said these kind of practices were like unbelievable. What are you going to say? That was the practice. They didn't want to get caught. And that's also a terror factor. Because you fight these guys, you're afraid to go and fight them unless you get some or blah 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 blah. Let's go now, guys. Who are you? Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.